Seems to be working. I'm not really sure what's up here. Hey everybody, sorry on the Odyssey side, having a little bit of YouTube technical problems here, but I'm going to be there. Just hang in there. Oh, okay. Yes, it looks like YouTube is indeed working. Hello everybody. How are you? I hope you can hear me okay. Somebody send me a comment on either Odyssey or YouTube if you can hear me. I'd appreciate that. That'd be really awesome. And good to see you guys again. All right. Well, you haven't seen me yet. Okay, so I'm doing a little, kind of like a little wiggle thing here. I didn't. For some reason, my printer's being a pain in the butt. So I'm going to have to do my notes from my screen, which is a new thing. Hello, Bourbon and Horses, Ariella. What's up? Yes, yeah, I don't want you to see me yet because I haven't really started yet. This is my little engineering pre-powwow with you guys. I hope it's up to snuff. All right, so I think I'm ready to go. Yeah, I need a third screen to really do this properly, but that's okay. Just don't want to miss any comments. What we're going to do is move this over here. Don't worry, we're moving happy little windows. We're rearranging windows so I can see comments while I talk to you guys. And then I'll move this over here. I'm going to see this anyway. Hopefully it's not too disastrous. Alright. Yes, yes. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Boy, got some crazy stuff coming up. We're just getting warmed up. We haven't even really hit the rubber hasn't even hit the road yet with this show. So, rubber meet road, RSN, right? Because that's like a thing. Like people like do that, right? They say RSN, man, instead of saying, I don't know, words. Because of course there aren't enough acronyms in there's plenty of algorithms in tech. There aren't enough acronyms in tech. All right, so let's get started. 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am broadcasting from the Moonbase Studio in Freeport, New York. I'm Matthew Newhall, and this is the Technocrat Live. Hello. Glad you guys could tune in. So please, if you like this show, I'm going to remind you again at the end of the show, like, love, and share it. Also, subscribe. Why do you want to subscribe, you ask? Why would I subscribe to this silly little show? I don't know, because next week's guest is Isaac Falcon. You like that guy? If you don't know who he is, he's a world-renowned hacker, and I'm going to have him on the show. He has kind of been my Bill Murray. He's my Bill Murray. So I'm not dissing Bill Murray. If he wants to come on the show, I'm down. But Bill Murray is the next best thing to Isaac Falcon. So he's going to be on the show. Next show, we kind of have a good rapport, and he's got a lot of interesting stories about hacking, and he's a pen tester now for a living. He's an idea man. He's an idea man. So if you're into ideas, that's the guy. Thank you for tuning in. I wanted to tell you about my Dystopia Report. Have you heard about the Dystopia? Yeah, you haven't heard about it? That's too bad because you're in it. Yeah, you can't get away from it that easy. You'll escape in due time, and that's part of the process. Part of that process is being here and listening to the show because the technocracy has got you. Why is this bumping like that? Silly. Anyway, the technocracy's got you by the short ones. So, cheers to escaping and pulling free, even if it hurts a little. Rip the Band-Aid off. And it does hurt a little, but that's okay. You'll be better off. So, without further ado, Dystopia Report. Let's get right into the tech section. So, man, I can't wait to do an interview next week, man. It's going to be freaking great. I'm pumped. I need to do an interview. I really started the show because I like talking to people, and I don't want to just talk and hear myself. I want to talk to you guys in the comments, and I want to talk to my guests. All right, so hot damn. Holy cow, it looks like Dropbox has a legit Web3 platform planned and built. It's a program called Dash, and it was an acquisition from a company called Command E. So Command E is basically the idea is they have an AI platform, and they'll look within or without Dropbox for your content all over the internet. This is beyond peeping over other people's walls. It's simply ignoring them, walled gardens in their walls, ignoring them and stepping over them. So this looks like this is like the first legitimate, not halfway Web3 platform plan. Again, I redefined Web3 from what I was calling Web3 is actually Web4. I see the progression now. I missed the whole AI step. I just didn't believe the AI was going to get good enough. But yeah, let me put this down a little bit. Let me know if that sounds okay. I want to keep the microphone away from my face because apparently I look like I have a microphone nose if I put the microphone too high up, and that doesn't sound good. I don't want to do that. So basically what they're doing is they're finding your stuff and organizing it as per your requirements into stacks. And so the metadata is generated on the fly by the AI that they've built, and getting you kind of out of the metadata tax, right? So that's really what Web 2 is all about. It's the metadata tax. I just heard from someone they can't comment on YouTube, but we have comments on YouTube, so it is working. I'm not sure what's up with that. And by the way, if you're familiar with Odyssey and you love that platform, I want to see you logging in to Odyssey, because I had some people talking me into Odyssey, and I'm pumped about it, but I can't be pumped alone. It doesn't really pay off, so help me, help them, help you. What? I just pulled that off. I really said all that stuff. So, and what are we saying here? Can't comment on YouTube. Won't allow me to. But rip the Band-Aid off. Well, we have an on comment of rip the Band-Aid off. How do they make money and pay for the service? So assume that Dropbox is going to offer premium services for their content, and of course you can bet your butt that their content will probably have some metadata advantages. But yeah, I mean, if it can find your stuff out there, the hard case is for a mix of public and private data, right? So like the hard case of a search engine is a shopping search engine, where you're not only searching for particular items, but you're pre-categorizing them and representing them. So that's what this is doing. So if they can solve this problem, they have completely lapped all the search engines. And it's not like just they're doing it. Other platforms are also, like Google, for instance, it has a similar competing project, but without the AI built in. So they beat everybody else. They recognize what this is what's going on before everybody else. So good for you, Dropbox. You really know your stuff. It's a very dead story. A lot of geeks don't get it. This is kind of like when cryptos came out and we're like, oh, it's geek money. What do I care about Magic the Gathering? Because Magic the Gathering Online was the main exchange, which, by the way, was a Ponzi. We won't get into that. But that didn't mean the cryptocurrency didn't work. It just means Magic the Gathering Online in Japan didn't work. So the Web 2 days are quickly ending. Technocrats don't get it yet. They really don't, but they will. Oh, yes. Yeah, so I don't think the product is out yet, or it is, and it's brand new. I haven't actually tested it, but I'm sure it is awesome based on their rather intelligent analysis of what the market wants. All right, so let's get on to Intel. This is also huge news. I don't know how pertinent it is yet, but I mean, originally PCs weren't that pertinent. People laughed at PCs. So Intel, interesting that I mentioned PCs, is shipping its first 12-bit quantum processor. So they call it Tunnel Falls. And before you get too excited, you ain't going to find this thing on Amazon or anything, because they're shipping it to exactly 4 customers. But wait, there's more. So it's a 12-bit quantum processor, and their plan is to have thousands of qubits with quality sufficient to enable error correction by 2027. So they are ramping up. Remember, it takes 2 to 3 years to ramp up manufacturing for a mass rollout of a particular kind of chip. They're planning on doing a mass rollout of quantum processors in 2027. So we might be in 1978 or 79 with quantum computers. And very interesting, this might also spell the end of encryption. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to trash cryptocurrencies because I love cryptocurrencies, but this might actually spell trouble for encryption unless new algorithms are built to be quantum hardened, which seems feasible because there's lots of different kinds of proofs you can do with crypto, with blockchains. Although a proof may become a necessary component of crypto, which would turn blockchains from being a very useful, very promising curiosity to an absolute necessity for any encrypted transaction. Ooh, that sounds like a pretty heavy hit you in the head, side of the head, real hard technology. Again, if you're not paying attention to the stuff, you're not really getting it. Hey, Rich, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who tunes in, whether you comment or not. But I appreciate you more and more vocally if you comment. So I've had 3 commenters so far. Join the club. It's a good club. I like it when you guys are in the club. All right, so if you want more on the quantum 12-bit processor from Intel, arstechnica.com, and they have the list of universities if you want to go work for one of them so you can tinker around with this thing. Probably a little early in the game if you're not at least a kernel developer kind of level computer scientist. But it's a trend, 27, man. There's going to be a lot of them. Okay, so did you know that the Titanic sank? Yes, that is a comment, Rich. Thank you. Did you know that the Titanic sank? I just wanted to let you know that the Titanic did not make it. Yes, it did not have enough lifeboats, it turns out. Yeah, no one understood what the flares meant either. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not actually talking about the Titanic. I'm talking about the submersible that was looking at the Titanic. I'm sure everybody's heard about this, but you may not have heard about some of the engineering and the science. Yes, that's the kind of quality, the quality take on the tabloids. That's what we do here on the Technocrat Live, because I'm trying to keep it interesting. We get pretty dry. If you talk raw comp sci and raw engineering, first of all, I'm probably going to flub it a lot more often. It's not really good for when I have guests like next week or the week after or the week after. Laura May is going to be on the week after, and Luke the following week. I hope they make it. Can't wait for them to check out the new studio. I am proud of this, and I'm really psyched. Anyway, so yeah, the Titanic submersible, it was a tourist submersible, was destroyed. Yes, you know how I know? Because aliens came and told us. No, I mean, apparently they landed in Las Vegas, but I'm not covering that because I don't have any official sources. Doesn't mean it's not true, just don't want to get in arguments with people about sources because then they get sad. I don't like it when people are sad. Why are you sad? UFOs make people sad. All right, anyway, so they found the debris. Yeah, they found pieces of the ship. And, when you find something in pieces, generally speaking, that means that the people that were depending on that machine for their life probably aren't alive anymore. Yeah, so there's a few interesting things here. We're going to start with a conspiracy theory that just happens to be very easily verifiable and probably true, but who knows? It's speculation with really good facts behind it. So when the Titanic sank, there were quite a few people on the Titanic who were involved in the Federal Reserve note. And were involved in that technology. And so this submarine actually contained people who were involved with competing currency technologies in the form of cryptos. Yes, so very interesting, kind of a weird rhyme that history has here. We had a few whales back then, whale technocrats, and now we got a few whale technocrats now, dying in the same spot over the same stuff. Very weird. I don't know. If you're into the spooky stuff, check that out. Also, a few things that were wrong with the ship for sure that people have verified while we were looking for it. There is a video of them hand tightening the bulkhead bolts. Yeah. They not with a torque wrench, with just a ratchet. Yeah. Okay, and you'll understand why that's a problem in a minute. They controlled the whole thing, basically a sardine can, with a wireless game controller, which I'm sure has not been tested at 30 leagues under the sea or whatever. It's actually 4 kilometers. I don't know how many leagues that is. How many leagues is 4 kilometers? Somebody let me know. Yeah, so we got a wireless game controller for steering, which apparently is a very nice wireless game controller, but it's a wireless game controller. If it failed, those people would die. I assume that they were going to like drop down to the command line to save themselves. So, of course, the next question is, of course, why is there no second submersible? If this is a practical thing to build the submersible, why not build two? And then if one of them fails, you send the second one down to try to rescue them. I don't know, right? I mean, I'm not saying that's always going to be the budget, but at least have one like work laying around, you know? I think I know why. So there's another reason. So this is 4 kilometers down. So I don't know if you've ever done the math on the pressures at 4 kilometers down, but our atmosphere, one atmosphere, Earth atmosphere, if that thing springs a leak, the water coming out of the leak will be traveling at 6,000 psi. So just to put this in perspective, machines that are built to cut steel and titanium and depleted uranium and whatever with water are 30,000 psi. 6,000 psi water will cut through anything but steel like a knife. So all this thing had to do was spring one leak, and it would literally be like a samurai sword, cut them in half. Whoever got hit by the stream of water. Wow. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something you want to happen to you. I got a comment here from Rich. It was doing a Windows update. And Ariel said, yeah, it was doing a Windows update. That's what he's saying. I don't know if you're kidding or not, but that's pretty funny either way. Ariel said, Logitech lost $1 billion in market value when the game controller news came out. Wow. Holy, it's just like the Titanic, dominating the headlines for weeks, even though it only affected certain people. Yeah, I mean, there's still people who are obsessed with Titanic today. Cheers, Titanic geeks. If you manage to get in the comments, I'll give you a shout out. I know it's killing you. All right, so yeah, so there was one other thing. I hesitate to talk about this just because it's politically correct, and but it's kind of accurate. Apparently, the company that was doing this was specifically all for doing hiring at least part of their people based on their abilities as a visionary and not as an engineer. We'll just say that. We're not going to get any further into it, but they did not necessarily pick the highest quality engineer. They picked a person who they thought was a good liaison for the company. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying an engineer can't be a liaison or a liaison can't be an engineer. I'm just saying when you're doing something that's really at the edge of plausibility, you need to be extremely practical. So yeah, don't do that. Anyway, so I'll let you guys look up the details, and you can read between the lines on that one. All right, so we have a new entry into the Tesla plug-in car charging network. Now, if you haven't heard, I covered it in the show. Tesla opened up their charging network. The Tesla chargers were first. They had a whole network across the country, at least in the United States, and across many other countries and continents all over the world. And then the other car manufacturers caught up with their electric cars. Well, at least in the United States, some of the other car manufacturers were looking at the CCS1 combined charging system, and it was kind of a patchwork. There were some CCS1 charging stations and some Tesla charging stations. Well, Tesla decided, screw this. This is hurting our market share for our cars. We're not in the charging business. We're in the car business. And they released the specs. They open sourced the specs for their charging standard, and we've had a few companies pick it up since. Ford, yeah. Now you can charge your Ford on the Tesla network. GM, yeah, and now Rivian, and they're standardizing on these. So they just have Rivian is the newest entry, and they announced that they're going to have no retrofit is going to be needed. They're going to have conversion cables. You'll just be able to plug a special cable for the CCS1. Maybe it's a standardized cable. I don't know. Into your Tesla charging cable, and then charge it that way. So yeah, it's looking like the Tesla network is going to be the network. which is really good news if you're an electric car owner because your network just doubled of possible charging ports. But it's kind of bad. I mean, at some point, it's just going to snowball. But it's kind of bad news if you have a Tesla. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Rich Rebuilds. Rich Rebuilds is a YouTuber who is famous for taking salvaged Teslas and restoring them to perfect drivability. Well, Tesla don't like that. And Tesla denied his supercharger access. So, but he had alternative charging networks. Like he could, theoretically at least, he could charge his Tesla on CCS1 networks if they ever allowed supercharging or the equivalent on that. Well, now that it looks like it's going to be a Tesla network everywhere, if you're trying to salvage an actual Tesla instead of one of the other cars, you may be out of luck because Tesla has a technocratic policy that you may blow yourself up by trying to get a salvaged Tesla to run properly, even if you have the chops to determine that it is safe and the batteries are not going to blow up. That sucks. You know, I mean, not only does that suck for the person who maybe has the skills and wants to invest the time into restoring old Teslas, but also it sucks because it's waste. It's technological waste. It's a great way to just throw money away and throw Earth resources away. And it forces you to junk stuff that's salvageable, and you know, keep durable goods durable. That's what Right to Repair is all about. Okay, so that's it for the Tesla charger story. On to flying cars. So there's a Suzuki joint venture with SkyDrive. A startup's called SkyDrive. It was some of the people from another Japanese company who decided to start up a flying car company. I use flying car loosely. They're just vertical takeoff planes, but the idea is eventually they're aimed at ordinary people, maybe with a special license. They're talking about having vehicles available as early as 2024. Flying cars in a year, supposedly. Well, probably a year and a half. Let's figure they'll skate right into the edge of the year. Vertical takeoff and landing, and it looks, and if you're wondering what it looks like, it kind of looks like a hobby drone with a pilot in the middle. Pretty much what you would expect. Okay, we got Ariella here. The pressure of 2.5 miles below the ocean is approximately 3 tons per square inch. Yes, and that is what makes the water come out at 6,000 psi if you spring a leak. Holy cow. Yeah, not good. And actually, I had that number. I didn't even, 2.5 to 3 tons, depending on the exact depth. Imagine putting 3 tons on your thumb. Yeah. The entire weight of a SUV on your thumb. That's what's happening on every thumb on that machine. So, yeah, having bolts that aren't torqued down, probably not good. Okay, so, all right. So, anyway, so check it out. Check out Suzuki's joint. Of course, the FAA is working on regulations to allow people to, I don't know, drive flying cars to work, but it's nowhere near done. Some estimates for that put it at 10 years, which means they don't want to do it, which means they're never going to do it. But there's a lot of political craziness going on in the technical world, so we may just start hitting natural law for technical for tech pretty soon, where people just do whatever works and don't ignore the law, and the law is forced to adjust. So basically, the technocrats will be outlaws briefly. I'm excited to see that because a lot of really cool tech can come out. You know, Wild West, like the movie, literally, where they had all the technology, the steampunk technology, except the modern version, like cyberpunk instead of steampunk. Make it look like steampunk because that looks awesome. Oh, hey, doing this right. Thanks for tuning in. J.P. Morgan owned Titanic, helped create the Federal Reserve in 1913, just 1 year after she sank. And FYI, it's Jen. What's up, Jen? What? And that may or may not be the Titanic buff. But yes, that is exactly right. J.P. Morgan was scheduled to be on that ship and was not, and was the owner of that, who owned the Titanic, was the creator of the Federal Reserve. It's a very weird coincidence that the future money people just drowned by the Titanic. I don't know. Funky, man, funky. That was not my idea, actually. I gotta credit Cliff High up on Twitter for mentioning that. That was pretty smart. I missed it, but yes, of course you knew you could verify that detail off the top of your head. It's good to be a buff. All right, so we got Amazon. Apparently, I covered this a little while ago on the show. It's kind of a small story. I wouldn't normally cover it, but it's a follow-up to a previous story, which I thought was a perfect example of what happens. And it's actually we're talking about again, DP Review or DPR Review. No, it's DP Review. .com is a review site for cameras and camera gear. Very popular. A lot of people went there to get their DSLR and such cameras checked out. Oh my God, I'm running on battery on my laptop. Please hold. I'm going to talk to you about this while I walk around the room. This is going to be crazy. Don't mind me. I forgot to plug my laptop in. Don't hate me. Anyway, so DP, we are a professional operation here at the Technocrat Live. Yeah. Oh, tell me I don't have my laptop charger. That would be a disaster. I have it. I gotta have it here. Aha! Saved by the bell. If I can plug it in on time, we'll be good. It's kind of interesting that public outcry was what was needed for to save that website that so many people who love cameras love. But why did it have to be public outcry? Because that's not what's going to preserve the internet in the long run. I mean, we got stuff like the Internet Archive, but is that really what we want to do? Is we really want to depend on that kind of? I am plugged in, right? Yes, I have a little lightning bolt. We're good. Yeah, of course you got your shout out. And hey, VO Freak, yeah, Ocean Gate, Watergate, bad choice of name. Bad choice of name. What's up, VO Freak? Rothschild was an investor in Ocean Gate. Rothschild was oh my God. What? Oh, I like this joint comments, right? Because you kind of got like the frosted mini wheat side and the whole wheat side, and like people, there's different crowds on each of the platforms. So I like bringing you guys together in one kind of chaotic maelstrom of thought bubble. Anyway, so I just thought this was kind of interesting that Amazon was going to can this poor camera site, and and there was a public outcry, and that's the only reason that it got saved. But you know what? That really isn't. We shouldn't have to have a public outcry to save websites that are useful to large numbers of people, but maybe not financially as viable as they were at their peak. Because remember, it's not about not being financially viable. It's just not about being as relevant as it used to be. That information is encyclopedic. We need that information, and we can't just depend on stuff like Wikipedia to pull that together. Obviously, the greatest work of fiction mankind is the largest work of fiction mankind has ever put together. And VO Freak says the plot thickens. I agree. Richiana Savati claims to be developing Stavati, sorry. Claims to be developing a flying car. Oh yeah, there's lots of companies claiming to be developing a flying car. The thing that got me about Suzuki, and I don't really trust Suzuki. I don't trust any company, but I particularly don't trust Suzuki. But they said next year. What? So someone's going to be flying around in drone-like flying cars in a year. Maybe it's just going to be on the Suzuki headquarters, but that could be a good story too. I mean, the guy from Segway went off a cliff, so on a Segway. So stay tuned. All right. Yeah, and holy cow, dude, holy technocracy. There was a Harris poll on Generation X and the older millennials. So there's a distinct marker for these people. With this Harris poll, Gen X and the older millennials are the people who are old enough to remember the world without the internet, right? And they said the internet makes life frickin' worse. That's right. So people, Generation X and the older millennials are like, yeah, we are unhappy in this. We wish we could live in a pre-internet world. They also were polled as a large majority thinking that it's important to keep up with technology. So they are at least understanding the technocracy. And to know the technocracy is to not love it so much. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess there's a lot of new Neo-Luddites out there, and welcome. This is your show. If that's how you feel, this show is for you, because we're going to keep talking about those technology ethics issues until either we fix them or, I don't know, they shut the internet down because they don't want to hear me talking anymore. VO Freak says, the Saudi king promises flying cars for his NEOM project Technocratic City. Oh, yeah. And, you know, I think I know who that is, and somebody mentioned to me in private something about the Saudi Technocratic City, But I will say this, it's kind of vaporware right now. At least if they, I at least want to see them break ground before I would cover it. Maybe then it depends on the details, but there's a lot of super technological cities, say in China, that were ghost cities or didn't work out, and there's others that worked out great, but you don't really know until people live in it how it's working. So it's kind of hard to. Like cities are definitely technology. In fact, they may be one of the key pieces of technology, but they move so slow they're almost never news. Right? You don't really know if a city's any good until people are singing about it, to be honest. All right, so so that's it for the Harris poll. Let's get on to the next topic. Sorry, I have to scroll through my interweb nets here. So if you want to learn more about that, it's up on Fast Company. Apparently they got an exclusive, fastcompany.com, but it's a Harris poll, so it seems like it's trustworthy. A tech government. All right, the White House is leading the news in this. Again, remember, we do not do politics on the show. No left, or we can do left or right, but no names of parties and no names of politicians. But we can talk about politics because there is some politics in tech, as with tech government. Yeah, top-down government projects always fail. They are not organic. Agreed. And that's why I didn't cover it, because I try not to cover vaporware. I try to only cover things I think are actually either have really close coming up deadlines, like they'll be done in a year, or it's something I think will actually work. But the White House has not been forthcoming with the COVID origins. There was a widely supported law. I'm not going to use that word that everyone uses. It involves the BI word. But a widely supported law of requiring declassification of all information about COVID, and they didn't do it. And this is on the heels of both the FBI and the DOE both pointing fingers at the Wuhan lab, having Chinese military ties, and being likely being either a leak or an intentional release from the Wuhan lab. Rich Sienna, I thought China just released one this week, like New York City. I'm not sure. I kind of lost the context, but okay, cool guys. Thanks, Rich and Ariella. I'm very suspicious. I can't imagine why they would not release this information about COVID. Of course, this affected the whole freaking world, and if China is even casually, negligently responsible, they should at least say they're sorry. I mean, I know it's never that simple, but why are we cutting them some slack, especially when our own military isn't? So talk about mixed messaging. Anyway, so I hope that they come around, because I think we were all kind of affected by that. I mean, we're talking about kids can't function in society anymore because of this thing. I think that warrants disclosure, at least basic disclosure. Yeah. Okay, so on to AI. AI. Grammys. The Grammys will allow a 20% contribution from humans to music into the Grammys, but anything less, and they will not accept it. I think the way I don't know what a 20% contribution in music means. I don't know how you determine that the computer did 80% of the work and you did 20. I'm gonna wild guess that to mean that at least one human needs to be playing the thing. So you need a singer or a drummer or a guitarist or a bassist or a keyboard, just using the rock band model, a 5-man rock band outfit. But who knows? I mean, I don't know what that means. But anyway, look at this. We got VO Freak said, soulless governments are never sorry for their manufactured crises. Yes. No. Well, you know what? They're not sorry until people do the only effective protest, which is boycott. Right? Protests don't work, and because all you do is put yourself on a list now with automation. Back when you could be quasi-anonymous, and if you didn't go too far, you could just go into a protest, hang out, and then leave, and no one knew you were there. Yeah, they worked, but they don't work anymore. It's just a self-tagging thing, and of course, violence is very asymmetric these days because of technology. Because everything's asymmetric because of technology. So. Anyway, so the Grammys will allow AI contribution of human music, 20%, if it's human contribution to AI music, as long as there's a 20% contribution, no less. No, whatever that means. So if anyone knows what that means, let me know. Yeah. So apparently this is not part of the same story, but it was also interesting and covered in the same Reuters story. Writers Guild of America, or the WGA, and the Screen Actors Guild, or the SAG, both are considering striking over motion pictures and using AI both for voiceovers and visual effects. In other words, we've gotten to the point where the actors are actually thinking, and voiceover actors are thinking about striking rather than let deepfakes replace them. Okay? So, if you are not watching a live show, right, if you're not interacting with a person, like my viewers are interacting with me on this show tonight, you don't know what's actually happening, right? This is bad news. This is one of the reasons I knew this was going to happen with deepfakes. I mean, I was talking about deepfakes in the 90s, but I knew this was going to happen with deepfakes, and it will happen eventually, even to small fry shows like this. Hopefully it won't be for small fries forever. But yes, you need your shows to be live, and you need to be able to interact with your hosts, because otherwise you don't know it's real, right? Because especially with quantum computers on the horizon and the possibility of cryptography either being crippled or completely obliterated, right? Then the only way to know is going to be to interact, you know, just that real-time kind of like, you know, give and take that you could do. You loved your Suzuki. Okay, great. You know, sorry, I always think about the Sidekick and how easily they tipped over, and I worry about quality control from Suzuki a little bit. Doesn't mean that a lower-end budget car company can't have great cars, but yeah, you know, like everybody remembers the doors falling off the Yugos. You know, that's why Yugo died, but I'm not saying Suzuki's Yugo, but, you know, your bad car is kind of what you lead with sometimes. All right, so that is it for the Grammys and the, I guess I could have put that under entertainment too, but it's definitely AI, because, I mean, if Hollywood's running scared, Hollywood's not running scared of Bollywood or anything anymore, or the internet, it's just running scared of AI. Yeah, that's big. All right, so we got investment. We have a person, Mustafa Suleiman, who is the Google, one of the core people in Google DeepMind. I think he has since moved on, but he was one of the original DeepMind people, and so he's a kind of a name in the AI world. He is proposing a new kind of Turing-style test. And where do you check this out? This is really, it's kind of funny, but maybe there's something to it. He's saying there should be a test for AI to turn $100,000 into $1 million. In other words, to increase $100,000 through investment by an order of magnitude to demonstrate that it's human-like. Two things with that. First of all, lots of people can't do that, right? So this is kind of almost like a post-Turing test. This isn't to see if you seem like you're human. This is to see if, like, you're on the top end of the IQ curve and you're human, the top end of the skill curve and you're human, right? So that's one thing. And the other thing is, who says investors are human, right? Am I right? If you don't know, if you don't live in an investment city like New York, I mean, they're a little cold sometimes. They're kind of a little uncaring. Go watch American Psycho. Yeah, not everyone acts like Bateman, but they have the flavor. Mwah. Anyway, so I think what is this? Other VO artists don't seem to see a loss of work. Yeah, I think so too. And AI can do some online wealth building stuff. And this is going to be, they're not. Rich says they're not human. Rich was in finance, so he would know, right? I'm assuming you're not a hacker. But even if you're a hacker, maybe you're in finance too, so there you go. Either way, you're in finance, whoever you are. If you're rich or an imposter, you're not an imposter. Yeah, so, AI did this. I think AI actually did some online wealth building stuff. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're talking about like a general purpose AI singularity type thing that's out there and running amok, it's definitely in the investment world. And of course, any kind of algorithmic advantage is a huge thing with investors. So human to execute the steps. Computers can do investing in markers server to server with AI building it automatically. So one of the things that Wall Street was most interested in with automation, we'll just say automation, is definitely, I've been saying AI again. I'm going to give the disclaimer. If you manage to make it this far and you're cringing every time I say AI, I know it's not AI. I know it's machine learning. We're not talking about general purpose AI. Fine. Totally get it. I mean, the process of developing it is wrong. It's usually task driven. But Rich says, yeah, I was in arbitrage. Okay, yeah. You told me some stories. Actually, I tried to get you to tell me the stories on the show, but you kind of didn't. And so, I'd love to have you back on someday and have you talking about what you were doing on the street. That would make me happy. I would like that. I think everyone would like that. I think everyone would like to hear good stories. Computers can do investing in marketing server to server with AI building it automatically. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're talking about machine learning, right? Yeah. So, and I think actually the space, and I mentioned this on another show, I think the space where this is going to really matter is going to be, it's going to be the retail sector, and it's going to change retail behavior, at least for a while. So using AI to predict what other AIs are telling retail investors is going to become kind of an art in itself. We got name the date. Okay, you got it, Rich. We'll talk offline. And the only problem is right now, I think there's a bunch of changes. I was using Discord for remote interviews, and Discord just made a bunch of changes. I didn't cover it today because I don't understand them yet, but they involve paying. So boo on paying. And paying sounds a lot like pain if you say it quick, or at least the way I'm saying it with my accent. The investment Turing test has been proposed by Mustafa Suleiman. So seems interesting. I think that could work as far as tricking people into thinking that you're human, or at least you're obsessed with hookers and coke. No, not everyone in the market is obsessed with hookers and coke, but they are out there. There are really Batemans out there. All right, so ChatGPT's 4's marketing pitches are 4 times more effective than human written marketing pitches. In what context? Specifically when pitching your business or your business model or your product to either investors or business owners. So if you're marketing a product to investors or business owners, you might seriously think about using ChatGPT to write at least your preliminary marketing strategy. Of course, look out for hallucinations as usual, but if there aren't any, hell yeah, it knows how to pluck people's strings, that ChatGPT 4. So check that out as a quick story on ZDNet. It's not too bad if that sounds interesting to you. You'll be in New York at the end of July. What? All right, we're definitely going to talk offline. That's almost synergistic. I hate that word. Yeah, wow. That's kind of weird. Good timing, man. All right, so Facebook, Meta, I call it Facebook, says it's AI, it's speech artificial intelligence, so their equivalent of their linguistic or AI, or the linguistic machine learning. So kind of the equivalent of ChatGPT is too smart. Yeah. No, not it's linguistic. It's actual speech. So it's vocalization. It's virtual voice AI, where it's doing deep fakes of people. It's too smart. It's too good. So there's a couple of interesting things about this. Of course, they could be lying because, we're going to be a conscientious objector and not contribute our technology to the public because we don't want to contribute to joblessness, blah, 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 politics, right? So, yes, I get it. They're probably right. It probably is a danger, but it doesn't mean that their altruism is going to do any good, right? Because open source, right? Everything that is, all you have to do is say something's possible, and thousands of open source developers swarm into it and try to make it actually happen, and trying to make a name for themselves. So, and then businesses realize that once they hit that 50% mark, businesses jump in there and say, I see you distracted me with NFTs. Anyway, Yeah, so businesses jump in there and say, oh, we need this. This works for us. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. All this is going to do is make Facebook AI, or should I say Meta AI, i.e., less relative. But, yeah, it's coming. So the deepfake technology in the open source space, I say, is probably going to be here in about a year. Odyssey has good emojis. Yes, awesome. Yeah, man. Yeah, use these platforms as best as you can. I want to see you. I want to see you make them sing. And by the way, if anybody ever wanted to like get ChatGPT in there in the chat, that would be amusing. It'd be interesting if I could see if I could guess who it was. Although keep in mind, one disadvantage to when I start having guests starting next week on here. Again, if you didn't hear, if you join me later, Isaac Falcon is my first guest. He is kind of my Bill Murray, and I'm going to have him on the show next week. So I'm psyched for that. It's going to be my first engineering my own show with my guest. No idea how this is going to go with the camera work. It's probably going to be a huge mess. I apologize in advance, but it will also be interesting. So it will not be boring. Yeah, so let's get on to science. First, I want to tell you about, I have something I want to tell you about. Yes. So, it looks like we may know when humanity started, or should I say human civilization at least. So one of the very first technology, the simplest technology to create the simplest example of any technology when a new technology comes along, it turns out in this case the technology was carving and the substrate was graphite. Yes, so we were finding carvings made of graphite. But here's a really interesting thing. You may be familiar with the acronym which describes the subject of the carving, which, by the way, was worn as a necklace, which is pretty amusing. TTP. Do you remember what TTP? Does everyone in the comments? Never mind. Don't put it in the comments. I'll just tell you. TTP stands for time to penis. Yes, humanity identified itself as becoming civilized with a time to penis moment. Yes, this has really happened. This is in the science section. It is an assortment of archaeologists working on this, but it was published in nature.com, the time to penis story. Yeah, pretty funny and definitely making me, they put it as 42-year-old anatomically accurate penis pendant is the world's earliest known depiction of human genitalia. Do with that what you will. I propose the carrot since they banned the eggplant. Anyway, we got another one. We got a couple more. No, we got one more story in science, and then two more science. Oh, I forgot there's a whole nother page. My God, what is wrong with me? I have so many stories. I hope you can hang in there, folks, because the science is getting good. Stanford University, finally some actual gas stove science. We've been hearing people going wah, 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 wah about gas stoves. So we have numbers now. And the great thing about numbers is you can refute them or identify that they are not going to be, that they're not valid. So benzene, which is a carcinogen and also can create cardiology problems. Yeah, that's fine. I do see Jen in the chat, and yes. Jen managed to post an eggplant. So I don't know. You are doing that right. I don't know how you got that eggplant in there, but you slipped it in when no one was looking. Man, they're probably gonna ban me now. Oh, it's Odyssey, so they won't care. If you're gonna be dirty, if you're not sure, if you're gonna be dirty, go on Odyssey. Yeah, probably better because YouTube's so picky, and you know how that goes. Delicious. All right, so benzene, which is a carcinogen, matches the concentration you find in secondhand cigarettes in some cases. So basically, if you have your stove on in your house, they're saying the amount of benzene coming out of your stove can match the smoke, the secondhand smoke from a smoker living in the house. So of course, it's much less smelly. In fact, the whole problem with natural gas is that particular concoction of chemicals doesn't really smell at all. It's an eggplant with a condom. They have a condom on an eggplant now? Wow. They just went right for it. I mean, you got to learn somewhere. Why an eggplant just seems... I mean, the birth canal is very flexible, but isn't an eggplant overkill? I really think a carrot. We fall back to the carrot people if necessary. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't like the eggplant. All right, what am I doing? Anyway, so yes, we were talking about cancer. Yes, we were being very serious, and we're in the science section. We're talking about eggplant with condoms on. Oh yeah, that's right. It's the crazy TTP story. I did this to myself. Oh God, I brought us all here in the science section. What have I done? Yeah, so the secondhand cigarettes, in some cases, can match or can even slightly exceed the cigarettes in benzene. Okay, so that's the good thing. They actually identified the chemical, and now we can talk some numbers. So, first of all, there are 250 chemicals in smoke, and they're almost all bad for you. 250. Benzene is just one of them, right? So that's the first problem with the whole natural gas argument. Secondly, ventilation, right? Ventilation is usually built into stovetops these days, right? They have hoods. So a house, if the test environment is purely stagnant lab quality sealed air and the benzene has no place to go, yes, you're going to reach those concentrations. But if it's an old drafty house with a vent and the fan is on, it's not going to be anything like that. Baby carrots, well, I guess the range is baby carrot all the way up to eggplant if we're going to go there. I mean, it is science. Baby carrot to eggplant. And you know what? It's the motion of the ocean. It's not the size of the vegetable. We got bananas and what is? Yeah, man. This has gotten practically. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore all the vegetables flying by in the comments. Yeah. So we got 300 to 700 micrograms of benzene per cigarette. So we're talking about a pack of cigarettes a day. Figure if in the case comparing apples to apples in the lab, the stuff doesn't leave the house. We're talking about 6,000 to 14,000 micrograms of benzene is what will give you the same cancer risk, say, as that one chemical would from cigarettes, right? So what is benzene created by? And benzene is created by imperfect burns, which is pretty much most fuels. That's the point of, they're not talking about, natural gas is the wrong fuel to burn inside. They're saying all fuels shouldn't be burned inside, which they're saying everything should be electricity. And of course, electric heat is less efficient. So it's going to be more expensive. But that's not even the only problem. So the real question is, why don't professional cooks have higher rates? Of course, the answer is probably because they have ventilation hoods, like big fat ventilation hoods over their cooking area. So why don't we just require people to have ventilation hoods? I don't know. Maybe have it like a little LED turn on the front of the ventilation hood telling you, hey, I sense some heat. Turn this thing on. Maybe a button so it has an auto turn on feature when it senses some heat. I don't know. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Why do we have to get rid of natural gas? What's the problem with getting rid of natural gas? Well, which, by the way, New York has already done. New York State, too, not New York City. In a few years, they're not going to be able to build new construction with natural gas stuff in them anymore, because natural gas is a natural byproduct of oil drilling, right? When you drill an oil well, you get natural gas, too, whether you want it or not. So we very cleverly said, this stuff's flammable. Why don't we use it as a fuel for heating houses, for cooking food, right? Groovy, not a problem. Except the problem is if we stop using it altogether and there's no market for natural gas. Now, this is not a reason to give people cancer, but remember, one of the reasons people are pushing for this is because they want the planet to be green. They're just going to burn that stuff off at the well, because that's the standard practice with oil wells. The natural gas has to be burnt. It can't just be allowed to seep into the machinery and ignored. It will blow up the well, right? Nothing is going to change that. Yeah. New York is crazy, yes, and it is. Actually, what he said was it's commie, but Kekistan forever. Yeah, you know what? I shouldn't have repeated that. That's kind of political, and you know what? I would actually say New York is authoritarian, and it kind of doesn't really matter. And I'll say it kind of doesn't matter who's in charge of which political party is in charge, because New York is tending to lean authoritarian more and more. It doesn't really matter what their flavor is. They're still saying, we're going to tell you what's right, and you're a dummy. You're an idiot, and we're your parent. And the problem with that is government's terrible at everything, which is why even though you need them, you should try to use them minimally. So whatever. Anyway, quit it. No more political stuff in there. All right, so apologize for repeating that. I didn't actually. I was just reading it to jog my brain. I'll try not to be tricked again. You tricked me. So yeah, natural gas is burned off from oil wells, and so you're not going to change the carbon footprint unless you get rid of oil completely too, and it's just not drilled for anymore. You're not going to change the carbon footprint of the planet at all by banning natural gas, which is the real stealth goal here. And really dumb, very, very unscientific, totally populist science, politicians with lab coats on. Hey, this polls well, let's do it. Yeah. If I start seeing more than one chemical that's a carcinogen in a perfectly non-ventilated space, maybe I'll start to worry. In the meantime, just get a hood vent. Anyway. Which you should have had anyway. The natural tendency of government is to grow and liberty to yield. Thomas Jefferson. Okay, groovy. That's I'll allow it. All right, so that was NPR, but there's plenty of places covering it if you don't like NPR for some reason. Animal 57 is real. So I don't know if you know what Animal 57 is, but the FDA has approved cell-based meat. What do you mean cell-based? I mean grown in a lab meat. Yeah, vat meat. They've approved their first vat meat. Animal 57 is real, people. We're an inch away from eating Animal 57 and Taco Bell, as was long ago rumored, and this was in the 90s. The FDA has just approved this. In this case, the cells are chicken cells. Maybe it's chicken cells, or maybe it just tastes like chicken. Hard to tell. Yeah. Anyway, so this is made by a company called Good Meat. So if you see Good Meat in the logo, it might be vat meat. So here's the thing. So the reason this company calls themselves Good Meat is they're making the argument that, oh, we're against slaughterhouses, but we're not against meat. So okay, I can buy that. We're just like, what could go wrong with that? I don't know. What could possibly, besides the vat coming to life and rebelling, and the next thing you know, it's Quake. I got the could. Don't worry. Actually, I've been slowly turning. YouTube has a throttle on the comments. I've been slowly turning it down. I like this speed. This is better. It was too slow before. This is an AP story. I agree with their argument about no slaughterhouses, and that one of the interesting things, two of the best arguments you can make against meat is that meat uses a ridiculous amount of resources compared to plants. Fair enough. And that slaughterhouses are unethical. Fair enough. I don't necessarily think that they're not a good compromise. We are made of meat. We are meat mechs. We are snackish, as described in Love, Death, and Robots. I am too snackish. I like meat. But this puts an interesting onus on vegetarians, right? So if you're an ideological, if you're a scientific vegetarian as opposed to an ideological vegetarian, you may be in a position where you can eat some meat. Are you going to do it? Bats are rebelling like the orcas? Well, that's probably going to have to wait for next week, but oh, wow, that's cool. Soylent Green is people! Ah! Yeah. By the way, if you missed the Orca Rebellion story last week, holy cow! And shout out that. Thanks, Jen. That is incredible. That is one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. We're getting some strange animal behaviors out there. Frankenmeat, yeah. So the real question is, if you're a vegetarian and you're eating Franken foods anyway, eating soy-based foods and things that wouldn't happen without manufacturing, why not some manufactured meat, like legit meat? I mean, you can't really be against salads, can you? I mean, obviously vegans are like, well, we don't have to make this decision. We're still in the clear. The vegetarians have got some tough decision making to do, because chicken is freaking delicious. There's a reason everybody eats it. Anyway, tiny dinosaurs. Meat. Bats refuse to be made into virus soup now. Ah! Hey, you know, that was the narrative. Fair game. All right, so that is it for the AP news story. Check it out. They didn't call it Animal 57. That's just the urban myth. Isn't there something about in Revelations about the in the Bible about animals rebelling? Well, all right. In fairness, Revelations is a gigantic, endless, very inclusive fever dream. So there's a lot of stuff in Revelations, including all kinds of whacked out math and puzzles. So, yeah, that's your thing. If you want to do that the rest of your life, I think they call that. What do they call a person that does that? Oh, a monk. Yeah. If you feel like doing that, studying that the rest of your life. And by the way, perfectly okay. But yes, I think there is something about animals rebelling in Revelations, because I think there's everything in Revelations. Yeah. All right. So that is it for the Dystopia Report. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Technocrat Live and the Moon-based Prime, and I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week. Isaac Falcon is the guest. Please, if you like this show, please give it a love, give it a like, give it a share, tell other people about it, and most importantly, subscribe. You know, the time to comment, it's better when you comment in line. The comments were great. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed doing this. The banter is almost like having a guest with like 4 or 5 of you going. So this is awesome. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next week at this time. For Isaac, choose wisely, choose to share. Are you still here? What are you doing here? Go home. Well, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I love you. I love you all. I love you all. All right, now I'm really getting off. Bye.